Well, welcome back. I've got Dr. Shan Nair online. Hello, Shan. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Mike?
I am doing really well. Been looking forward to this conversation for a bit. So, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and then we'll jump into the conversation.
My father was a diplomat, so I lived in 13 countries and went to 12 schools in four languages. I decided that I wouldn't be a diplomat, and I actually got a PhD in nuclear physics, and I was a nuclear safety expert for 19 years. Towards the end of that period, unfortunately, I did not win the Nobel Prize. And so I decided that I will change my profession. So I requalified as an accountant, completely different. But I requalified as an accountant, set up my own firm, decided what the USP should be, which was basically a niche market where I am now and was then, helping mainly US, but no longer exclusively US, technology and other companies in specific market sectors that don't involve large amounts of production and lot of stock being held. So it's mainly technology, enter new markets. And really, the help was not so much in helping them enter the market per se, but in terms of providing them with the infrastructure support to ensure that when they enter the new markets, hire people in foreign countries, it's all done legally, protecting their interests, and that their entities in the foreign countries are kept compliant. So I had a lot of international experience as a kid, decided I didn't want to do that, and then changed my profession, and now I end up doing precisely that.
It's amazing, amazing work that you've done and are doing. And it's really good that
Yeah.
you recognized, right away that, okay, this is, okay, I'm not getting the Nobel Prize, darn. Okay, well, now what am I going to do with this? And leveraging technology, even as early on as you did it, was a smart move because that continues to evolve, including, current time where
Yes.
AI seems to be front and center topic of mind, which as we're seeing even in the announcement yesterday about
Mm-hmm.
OpenAI
Mm-hmm.
going into the consulting business on how to
Yes.
deploy AI in
Yes.
corporations and things like that. And they're not the only one, of course.
Mm-hmm.
McKinsey, Bain, and all the other players are doing that as well, and
Yes.
other entities as well, because they recognize, okay, yes, we have this technology, but how in the world do we use it? What do we do with it? And how
Mm-hmm.
do we account for it? How do we measure it? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've always had, not exclusive to AI, but
Mm-hmm.
anytime we implement any type of initiative, whether it's using technology or not,
Mm-hmm.
there's opportunities to figure out, okay, what's the cost benefit of this? What's our ROI on this?
Mm-hmm.
What is this going to create for us, both positive, any hurdles is it going to create, and all of that? And you've seen it, with the organizations that you've been a part of, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
early days, Tesla being one of them, and many others. What are some things that you see time and time again. Even doesn't matter what the new thing is. I'm guessing there's a lot of commonalities that you see when organizations are trying to do something different or new or
Mm-hmm.
basically refine how they do things. So I'd love to hear your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on that.
I think there are two different levels. To deal with the AI first, the key thing that's different about the type of business that I'm in, which is basically dealing with client-sensitive information, and in particular, payroll information, sick leave information of individuals' names, home addresses, and you're dealing with it in foreign countries, including the European Union um, and UK, is data privacy. Because in the European Union you have GDPR and you have a UK version of GDPR which is very stringent and has unlimited liabilities on people breaching it. So basically, you can't really use these systems as they are because information can protected information can end up in the public domain. So the focus with AI is to develop our own AI internally, our own AI systems to enable us to uh, deploy it effectively within the business. What does that mean? I'll give you a very simple example. When client invoices are being produced, the invoices are based on timesheets. The timesheets say what's been done. Timesheets should be checked to make sure that the information given in them is presented in a manner that a client understands, because we've got offices in multiple countries. People's English is not at different levels. People speak English at different competency levels. So it's a question of making sure that invoices are properly worded and getting out. And that's an area where we've made a lot of efficiency gains. We're getting invoices out much faster to clients. That helps, obviously, our cash flow, but it also helps the client, because the client doesn't want bills owed that he doesn't know what it is sitting there for 2, 3 months, which is one of the big problems in law firms and accounting firms. They take a long time to get invoices out. And if you're the client, you don't know what you owe them. And that's not good. Anyway, when you do the accounts, you need an accrual, but an accrual is a guess. So if you've got an actual number, you're in much more solid ground. That's a small example of how is being deployed within the business. There are other areas in terms of accounting processes, payroll processes, HR processes, where we're looking at how AI can be deployed. The
Yeah.
the second point you mentioned, I think, is completely different. It's basically knowledge base. So you help, to give you an example, Belgium and Netherlands in Europe have a benefit if you're shipping goods into Europe, because you can both claim and pay and reclaim your VAT in the same form. They have a contra entry system. Whereas, say, if you're shipping goods into Ireland, which is also part of the EU, you pay the VAT now and you reclaim it in 3 months. So there's a cash flow advantage in shipping goods through Belgium and Netherlands. The rules are different, but the principles are the same. So knowledge base will have the details of helping a client import goods into Netherlands. And there are different options like bonded warehouse, etc., etc. I won't bore you with those. But the same options are there in Belgium. So you worked it out for client A 2 years ago. Now a client B is coming in with the same problem, but it's Belgium now, not Netherlands. You don't have to reinvent the apple. You basically look at the Netherlands solution, look at the difference in the laws, any updates in the Belgian laws um, to affect the procedures, and then you apply it. So client gets a response much faster and cheaper, because you've spent less chargeable time figuring out what they need to do. So a knowledge base in a service business like ours is very, very important. And that knowledge base needs to be kept current in terms of changes in regulations, which worldwide happen every 3 months. There's probably about 15 to 16 countries where some detailed law relating to compliance, whether it's corporate legal compliance, change in employment law, it could be change in accounting or tax compliance, happens. So it's a question of keeping track of that and updating your knowledge base, and also storing client experiences, what we call a client experience, because that could be deployed to sort out another client's problems much faster and quicker and cheaper than if they went to a big four firm that would typically be our competitor in that respect.
Some great nuggets there. A couple things when you were talking about AI at first. It more or less is for those of us that remember these phrases, we remember internet and we remember intranet. Meaning intranet being internal. This
Yes.
is this
Yes.
doesn't see the outside world kind of thing. And
Yes.
with AI, especially when you're dealing with sensitive information such as personal records, payroll, health records, you name it, it's important to keep it within an organization and not in the wide, vast world where everybody can search it and find out about it. So
Yes.
that's critically important. And so I remember that part
Yeah.
from as well. And the complexities, as you mentioned, this is where AI and keeping track of all these things is so important because it's difficult, just to keep track of. Let's say you're in California, for example, where breakfast leadership is based. There's always changes to various laws, tax laws, payroll laws, employment
Yes.
laws, hours, overtime, you name it. There's so many different
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
And keeping track of that, to be aware of it, is one thing. But if you're serving a client base,
Mhm.
let's say a restaurant industry, for example, well, there's some
Mhm.
specifics that tie into that. And before, it's like, oh yeah, it's always been top of mind. Oh yeah, this company we probably should pay attention to this. We're leveraging the knowledge base on this, saying,
Yeah.
okay,
Yes.
which of my clients would these new regulations or laws impact,
Yes.
and how can we address it? And it
Yes.
maps it all out. Now, a human can do that, of course, but it's a time consuming endeavor for sure.
Mhm.
And leveraging AI to kind of give you this,
Mhm.
ballpark of what you're looking at is important. And
Mhm.
and I want to frame this. And I actually gave a keynote not too long ago to the California municipal clerks, who handle voting and whatever
Mhm.
government clerks do. And in that conversation, we talked about, okay, how can we automate things? And the top of mind thing was, okay,
Yeah.
we'd love to be able to use AI to automate elections, the election process. And like, okay, well, that definitely needs to be some fine tuning, because elections are critically important, and there's always talk about elections being flawed or
Yeah.
tampered with, or whatnot. And yeah, thinking about that from a grand scale, because there was one municipality, one city in California, they've got 4 elections this year to deal with. Because they've got some, by-elections for somebody that stepped away, and so each
Mhm.
election is a monster in itself. They've got
Mhm.
4 in that city, so that's a tough go of it. So anything
Mhm.
that could be done to automate and streamline some things would be
Mhm.
beneficial. And I think that's where, when we think about technology and we think about AI and what it could do, is like, you think about, okay, what can we do? And we see this time and time again. And we talked about it before, where organizations, they want to deploy AI, but it's like, unless their systems are rock solid, all they're doing is automating failure faster, because if their systems are broken, they're just going to automate the broken
Yes.
systems. And
Yes.
it as much as people hate this, and I have
Mhm.
these conversations all the time, i- organizations need to more or less hit the pause button as much as they can. You can't stop your business, but
Mhm.
figure out a way to go, okay, we need to get a better understanding of what things happen, or how things happen here. What's the workflows? Where are those gaps? Because sometimes we don't see it because we're so busy doing it. We don't necessarily see it, which is kind of ironic if you think about it. But it
Sure.
happens in every organization, where if you take stock and go, actually, how are things flowing? That's where you're going to be able to see a lot of the gains. And I think, especially in the service industry, the more streamlining you can do and find efficiencies, the better you're going to be able to serve. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Um, I think the issue there is more looking at your, we have something internally we call SOPs, standard operating procedures. There's standard operating procedure for running payroll in Germany. There's another SOP for running payroll in Brazil. There's a third one for accounts, producing management accounts in China, which have to be done in Mandarin in local on a government approved system, for example. So basically, it's a question of looking, and we are currently have clients in 56 countries. So it's a question of looking, getting the AI not just to automate elements of the SOP or all of it. It's getting AI to look at whether that SOP is actually the best way of operating in the first place. Yeah. And whether there are ways of actually fine tuning it or improving it that aren't immediately obvious to the human being. Because the SOP is very detailed. It covers, taking payroll as an example, producing payroll information, getting check the levels of checking, cross-checking, um, then the transmission of the information, and the fact that it needs to be protected when it's transmitted, the response from the client when they approve the release of the pay slips, the uploading of pay slips into a particular client's HRIS system, so, there's multiple elements, and it's a question of basically is that sequence of events the best sequence, or is there a more efficient way of sequencing it to just take a very simple case of the payroll? Um, and then having figured out the best, most efficient way of sequencing it, is this a process that can be semi-automated or automated? And overriding everything is the data privacy aspect. Because we, even in countries where there are lax data privacy rules, we actually apply the European GDPR standard across the board because we don't want an employee's details to go to the wrong person or go to, yeah. So for example, we once had a instruction from the client to run payroll where the client by mistake had transposed two different employees' salaries. So employee A was getting employee B's salary and vice versa, and one was being paid more than the other. The AI picked it up by comparing with prior data. So we then went to the client and said, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Yeah, we told you to pay." I said, "Are you sure?" We don't think this is right. They came back and said, "Oops, we made a mistake." But that's a kind of, you could have said, "You asked us to pay, we paid." But that's not the way we do service. We're there as the client's team, not protecting our backside first.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to focus. And again, there's just another
Yes,
example of the
yes,
benefits of catching something. Now, if you're you know processing the payroll and you notice, okay, Jim is making more than Synthogen this month, and are
yes.
there hours out of the ordinary, or
Mhm.
something going on, additional project where one is working extra hours to get something out the door quite quickly?
Yes,
Who knows? There could be a variety of different
yes,
things,
yes.
but those anomalies are usually going to
Right,
find either errors or efficiency
right,
opportunities. Like, okay, why
right.
is this employee working extra hours? Or why, in the example you gave, why is this employee all of a sudden making more than they normally were?
Or
And we
less.
haven't, or less, and we haven't seen anything. There hasn't been a payroll adjustment request come in or
Yes,
time off request. So it's a
yes,
great way
yes,
to
yes.
leverage it. And
At the other end of the spectrum, though, there is also, transfer pricing is very important when you're supporting a client with international operations, because of the costs that each company in the group levies on the other in a different country is a sensitive parameter. So, for example, drafting an intercompany agreement, which is basically a contract between the parent and the subsidiary, and drafting a benchmark report that has arm's length pricing on what the subsidiary pays to the parent for the support it provides, or depending on the business model. Those are things, though, where AI can only semi-automate. The human brain comes into it, and business nouns comes into it. So there are certain areas where you can use AI almost fully, where it's proceduralized, but there are also areas where you have to have your own skill set, ability to analyze bell-shaped curves of pricing, transfer pricing, distributions, things like that. I won't go into the detail of it, where tax expertise and skill comes into it. But my biggest concern about AI is that it'll wipe out the learning curve for a lot of people. So we're fine right now, but in 20 years' time, when the experts retire, there aren't going to be a pool of new experts coming up because they never started at ground level and never got trained up. And that's one of my concerns with AI.
No, that's a great one to think about too. And before I forget, going back to that municipal clerk example,
Yeah.
many of them are using AI to capture meeting notes for the various governmental meetings and all of that. And the stats are showing there's about an 80% accuracy, and they've got to add, as you mentioned, the human element of it because they were in there.
Mhm.
But from before, it was like it was 100% the human taking care of the notes, and now AI is taking, and getting about 80%. So basically, what that does is it allows the whoever's taking the minutes more or less to be more present than they were. I mean, when you're taking minutes, you're listening and all of that, but you're listening for things and you're documenting things down. Where if you're present, you might hear some things or some nuances or whatever
Mhm.
that may come into play. But the knowledge loss, that is something that I've been hammering
Yes.
home with organizations for years, long before we started
Yeah.
leveraging AI.
Yeah.
Is we have a gigantic number of leaders and thought leaders and experts and people that have been with organizations a long time. In
Mhm.
healthcare and other entities, we call it the
Mhm.
silver tsunami.
Mhm.
Where the baby boomer generation are,
Yeah.
are in retirement age, and the tail end of the baby boomer generation will be retiring over the next decade or so.
Yes.
And there is a massive knowledge base there, and if we don't leverage it, it's gone. And we think, I'll use this example. It's a wild example, but the process of mummifying a body, from my understanding, we've lost the ability to know how to do that. We know, we go to museums, we see mummified bodies of, whomever, King Tut, whatever.
Yeah.
And the process that they used, we don't know how to do that. Even though we did it as a human race, we did it,
Mhm.
all those years
Yeah.
ago.
Thousands of
Now
years.
that
Gone.
technology is gone. We don't know how to do it. Which you're like, wait a minute, how did we lose that? Is because we didn't document it. That knowledge transfer didn't pass on. And that's a wild example, but it's actually,
Fair enough.
if we don't document things, and I think this is where, the knowledge base within AI can help.
Mhm.
But again, how deep is it?
Mhm.
It's only as deep as the information we give it. So if
Mhm.
you're a leader and you want a knowledge dump, like for example, I know an organization, their CEO is retiring and they're bringing in a new CEO, and they're going to have, the incoming CEO spend time with the outgoing CEO, but that CEO's been there for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
Are you going to dump 20 plus years of knowledge into the new CEO over a period of 3 weeks? Is that
Mhm.
possible? No, it just isn't. There's so many
No.
nuances of things. You
No.
can have the basics. You can have,
Yeah.
here's this and this, here's the relationships, here's the context and all of that. But the experiences, the observations, when situations come up, how did we navigate this? It starts, that knowledge starts to fade away to the point of,
Mhm.
we don't know.
Mhm.
Does create an opportunity for the new leader to, kind of figure out their own way. But I'm with you on this when it comes to AI. Is,
Mhm.
whether it's in colleges and universities or anything else, it's like, well, we're just, asking for it and it's giving us the answer and we apply it. Are we
Sure.
learning anything, or are we using kindergarten skills and just copying and pasting? And I'm not knocking copy paste,
Mhm.
use it every day in all kinds of different things, but
Mhm.
that knowledge and gained information,
Mhm.
it concerns me because, as you said a moment ago, yeah, the thought leaders, are they actually thought leaders because of the experiences they've gained,
Mhm.
or are they good at writing scripts and code in AI to give them answers? And I'm concerned about that from a humanities standpoint, not just
Mhm. Mhm.
information and how we run businesses. I think,
Mhm.
these are conversations that we all need to
Sure.
have.
Sure.
So, so, so
I agree, except that I would
yeah,
say with sorry to interrupt you there, with the CEO case, sometimes if a CEO has been there for 20 years and a new one has come in, um, might be might be a good time to look at everything fresh. Of course, to understand how it's run before, but probably organizations can ossify. You see that in the civil service, in the government services. I am a firm believer that, I think Doge, if it had really could have done a really good job. I don't know if it has, but there's obviously in situations where there's a moribund organization run the same way for a long time, things get ossified. individual initiative gets suppressed. People with ideas can't execute them or even enunciate them. That's happened to me in an earlier career when I was in the nuclear industry because we were in the public sector in the UK, and I know how it works. Politics takes over, and when politics takes over, that's when organizations decline.
Yeah, and we know the stats about organizations, like the Fortune 500 from the year 2000, 52% of them are gone. Over
Mhm.
half of them are gone. And
Mhm.
why?
Yeah.
Politics, not, keeping in tune with what the market was asking for. There's a variety of reasons why, but
Yes. Yes.
politics seem to be a common thing where the leader says, "This is how we've always done it." I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, then you're not going to be around. I don't care if you've been around for 90 years. If you don't adapt to what the
Hmm.
market demands, you're not going to last. Just because
Yes.
we did it this way doesn't mean we do it now.
Yeah.
I it's and I agree with you. I think fresh eyes and fresh experiences, not ignoring the past, but looking at it and kind of reading the room and going, okay, what's going on now? Whether it's the one organization I'm referring to is a
Mhm.
nonprofit, and they get a lion's share of their funding from government funding, and we know that government funding in a variety of areas is shifting and changing, and depending on where you're at, could be cut back quite a bit. Well, what does that do? And you got to be prepared. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket, because that basket might be taken away, and all of a sudden, what
Yeah.
do you have as an organization? So you have to.
Sure.
It goes from strategic planning. Not that I'm against that. By all means, you have to be strategic, but you also have to have a scenario planning of
Yeah.
going, okay, if we lose 20% of our funding, how do we adjust? If we lose 50% of our funding, how do we adjust? Or if you're a for-profit organization, okay, if sales decline 5%, what do we do? 10%, what do we do? 15%, what do we do?
Mhm.
Whirlpool, that example I gave, the CEO, they announced they were going to be doing, I think, 8% price increases across the board starting in July of 26. And they announced, okay, we're actually, because of the conditions we're facing, we're raising prices anywhere from 10 to 15% across the board right now,
Mhm.
because they see an issue, they're trying to get ahead of it,
Mhm.
and adjust pricing and cording based on the various things that are going on in supply
Mhm.
chain and tariffs and taxes and wars
Mhm.
and everything else that we're all dealing with.
Right.
But they're trying to get ahead of it based
Right.
on past experiences that they leveraged on. We'll see how that goes for them. But again, a lot of organizations and leaders right now are looking at the future, going, how are we going to navigate this? And the ones that are willing to take risks may actually be better off than the ones to say, well, we've been through this before. We're just going to sit back and watch. And yeah, I'd much rather be driving the bus than being a passenger in times like this. And I know some people don't want to be that way, but once again, I'd rather have the control and be able to,
Yeah.
pivot and then just sit
Yeah.
and wait and see what happens.
Yeah. Fair enough. It depends on your mindset. Sometimes, you can be um, s- reluctant to stick your neck out because you're scared that if you did that and things went pear-shaped, you're going to get the blame, as opposed to feeling fairly passionately about something, sticking your neck out, whether it's for the good or for the bad, and knowing the consequences if it goes bad, but feeling pretty confident that it's going to go well, and put um, your not quite your money where your mouth is, but put 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 out exactly what you believe in, and then execute on it and make sure that it's a success. So it's a question of whether you look forward at all times or whether you look backward. So when I started the earlier business, I left a job. I lost my pension because I resigned too early, and I just started two of us in a room. And you don't look back. What if I hadn't? Even and all businesses go through a success period and a stress period. In the stress period, it's very easy to say, "Oh my God, I wish I hadn't done it. If I'd been there, what would have?" You don't look like that. You look forward. You say, "Okay, there's a problem now. How do we resolve this? Let's get a solution. Let's resolve it and move on."
That's the best way to approach it. It's like, all right,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
it's easier to pivot when you're moving, and
yeah.
and
Never look back.
realize, yeah, I mean, yeah, looking back, you're gonna walk into a wall, if or something even worse, because you have, what's ahead of you is what you do today can help your tomorrow be better.
Yes,
And
yes,
if you're looking back, you're looking at yesterday. Yesterday's dead
yes,
and gone.
yes.
Yes, there are lessons from it, but don't spend too much time looking back there. So, Shan, I love this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
At www.nucleus-co.com, and my email contact details are there. There is an
Awesome.
info at nucleus-co.com, but I always see what goes in there. I don't immediately get it, but I always see what goes in there within about a day or two.
Beautiful. I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So loved our conversation today, Shan.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much for being on the show.
Thank,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you very much. Thank you.